It didn't happen all at once. It never does. No one wakes up one day and suddenly feels like they're too much. It happens slowly, in small moments, small comments, small reactions, until one day you start believing it. I remember the first time he said it. We were sitting in the car after a long day. Traffic was heavy, the air was tense, and I was already exhausted. I had tried talking to him about something that had been bothering me for a while. Nothing dramatic, just something I felt, something I needed him to understand. But before I could even finish, he sighed. "You're overthinking again." I paused, tried to explain. "No, I just feel like," he cut me off. "You're too emotional." That was the first time. It didn't sound harsh. It didn't feel like an attack. It sounded casual, like a simple observation, like something obvious. And maybe that's why it stayed with me, because it didn't feel like something I could argue with. It felt like something I had to accept. After that, it started happening more often. Every time I expressed something deeper, every time I tried to talk about how I felt, there it was again. "You're too emotional." At first, I pushed back, tried to explain myself better, tried to choose better words, tried to make my feelings sound more reasonable, less intense, more acceptable. But it didn't change anything, because the problem wasn't how I said things, it was that I said them at all. And slowly, I started saying less. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I learned something. Every time I spoke, I was too much. So I adjusted. I filtered. I softened. I stayed quiet more often. And the strange thing was, he seemed more comfortable, more relaxed. Like the version of me that spoke less was easier to be around. That should have been my first real sign. But I didn't see it that way. I thought I was improving, becoming calmer, less reactive, more understanding. But I wasn't. I was just disappearing, piece by piece, until expressing myself started to feel like a risk, and silence started to feel safer. Weeks turned into months, and that pattern became normal. I would feel something, pause, think about how he would react, and then decide not to say it, because I already knew what he would say. "You're too emotional." And I didn't want to hear it again. Then one night, something shifted. It was late. We were at home, the same quiet setting, the same routine. But something inside me felt heavier than usual. Not because of one moment, but because of everything that had been building quietly over time. I tried to ignore it, tried to let it pass, but it didn't. So I did something I hadn't done in a while. I spoke. "Can we talk for a minute?" He looked up from his phone. "About what?" "Just something I've been feeling." He sighed. Not loudly, but enough. That small reaction, it almost stopped me. Almost made me say, "Never mind." But I didn't. "I just feel like we've been distant lately," I said carefully, choosing every word, making sure it sounded calm, reasonable, not too much. He leaned back slightly. "Here we go again." That line hit differently, because it wasn't about what I said, it was about the fact that I said anything at all. "I'm not trying to argue," I added quickly. "I just want to talk." He shook his head slightly. "You always do this." "Do what?" "Feel something, express it, try to understand it." But I didn't say that. I just stayed calm. "I just want us to be okay," I said softly. That's when he said it again. Clear, direct, without hesitation. "You're too emotional." Silence filled the room. But this time, something was different. Because I didn't respond. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I didn't try to make him understand. I just stayed quiet. And in that silence, something shifted. Not in him, in me. Because for the first time, I heard those words differently. Not as a flaw, not as something I needed to fix, but as something he didn't want to deal with. And that realization changed everything. The silence stayed there for a moment. Heavy, but not uncomfortable. At least, not for me. For him, maybe. Because he was used to something else. A reaction. An explanation. A defense. Something to respond to. But this time, there was nothing. I just sat there, looking at him, calm. And for the first time, I saw it. Not just what he said, but how easily he said it. Like my feelings were something inconvenient, something unnecessary, something he didn't want to deal with. And suddenly, everything made sense. All those times I stayed quiet, all those moments I held back, all the things I didn't say just to keep things peaceful. It wasn't peace, it was avoidance. And I was the one adjusting every time. He shifted slightly in his seat, uncomfortable now. "Why aren't you saying anything?" he asked. I tilted my head just a little, because that question, it said a lot. For so long he had a response for everything I said, but now he didn't know what to do with silence. "I'm just thinking," I said quietly. And I was, but not in the way I used to, not overthinking, not doubting myself, just seeing things clearly. "You're doing it again," he said. That line almost made me smile, because even my silence was now something to criticize. But this time, it didn't affect me, because something inside me had already shifted. "I'm not doing anything," I replied calmly, and I meant it. I wasn't trying to prove a point. I wasn't trying to win an argument. I wasn't even trying to fix anything anymore. I was just done adjusting myself to fit into something that never made space for me. He let out a frustrated breath. "This is exactly what I mean," he said. "You take everything too seriously." There it was again. A different version of the same thing. Too emotional, too serious, too much. And for the first time, I didn't try to shrink myself to fit that. I just looked at him and nodded slightly. "Maybe," I said. That answer caught him off guard, because it wasn't defensive. It wasn't reactive. It was accepting. But not in the way he expected. I wasn't accepting his label. I was accepting something else. That I didn't need to change how I feel to make someone else comfortable. And that realization, it changed the entire conversation. Because there was nothing left for him to argue with. No emotion to push against. No explanation to twist. Just calm clarity. I stood up slowly. Not to leave, just to move. Because sitting there felt unnecessary now. He watched me carefully, trying to understand what was happening, trying to find something familiar in my reaction. But there wasn't anything familiar, because I wasn't the same in that moment. Looking back, I realized something. It wasn't just that he called me emotional, it was what came with it. The dismissal, the lack of effort to understand, the expectation that I should adjust, while nothing on his side changed. You can't build something real, when one person keeps shrinking to keep the other comfortable. Eventually, there's nothing left. I walked toward the window and stood there for a moment. The night outside was quiet, still, clear. And somehow, it matched exactly how I felt. Not confused, not overwhelmed, just clear. "You're not even trying to talk anymore," he said behind me. I turned slightly. "I tried," I said softly. And that was the truth. I had tried, more times than I could count, in different ways, with different words, at different moments. But trying only works when both people are willing to meet in the middle. And we weren't meeting anywhere anymore. We were just existing in the same space. He didn't respond immediately, and for a moment, neither did I, because there was nothing urgent left to say. Some conversations don't end with a fight. They end with understanding. And once you reach that point, there's no need to keep going in circles. "I didn't mean it like that," he said finally. I nodded. "I know," I replied. And I did. Because people don't always mean to hurt you. But that doesn't change what their words reveal. It doesn't change the pattern. It doesn't change how you feel over time. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to fix that. I was just accepting it. "I'm tired," I added quietly. He looked at me, confused again. "Of what?" I paused for a second, then answered honestly. "Of not being understood." That landed. I could see it. Not fully, not deeply, but enough. Because sometimes the simplest truth is the hardest to ignore. I picked up my phone from the table, not to text, not to distract myself, just to have something in my hand, something steady, because everything else had already shifted. "I don't think I'm too emotional," I said calmly. "I think I just feel things you don't want to deal with." Silence. Complete silence. Because that wasn't something he could easily respond to. Not with logic, not with deflection, not with anything. It just was. And in that moment, I realized something else. I didn't need him to agree. I didn't need him to understand fully. I didn't need him to change. Because my clarity was enough. I walked past him slowly, not rushing, not dramatic, just moving forward. Because once you stop seeing yourself as too much, you stop staying in places that make you feel that way.